Welcome to Common Sense. Common Sense is a series of shows that feature interviews with interesting people so that we can get to know them in a clear, concise, and direct way, who they are, what they do, and what makes sense to them and what doesn't. I'm Rudy Breglia, and today I'll be interviewing a job creator, entrepreneur, and candidate for Lorain County Commissioner, Jeff Riddell. Thanks for coming, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Rudy, for the invitation, and I always enjoy talking about common sense because it seems like we have less and less of that all the time.
Yeah, that is a little bit of a problem these days. And thank you for your volunteer service that I've learned about. Jeff, to start us off, why don't you tell us where you were born, where you've lived, give us some background on you.
Well, I was born in Lorain, the eldest of 4 children.
Okay.
My dad was a World War II veteran, came home from the war and went to college on the GI Bill, and married his college sweetheart.
Okay.
And moved back into Lorain, where the family had a business. He was 3rd generation in the business.
Okay.
He came to work in it, and I had a brother and 2 sisters. And so the 4 of us were raised in Lorain our entire youth.
Okay.
Long-time Lorain family. We'd been there since 1904.
Wow.
So, deep Lorain roots. I went to Lorain High School, graduated from Lorain High School, and then moved on to Penn State University.
Okay.
Computers was a budding science back in those days, and I thought maybe I'd like to get involved in computers.
Okay.
Found out I wasn't a good candidate for electrical engineer.
I see.
So I switched to accounting because they use computers, but they don't design computers.
Okay.
So
Right.
I switched to accounting and human resources as kind of a field of study. I guess maybe you'd call it a minor or a field of influence or whatever.
Okay.
And graduated at Penn State and returned home to the family business.
Okay. Jeff, are you living the American dream right now?
I believe I am. I believe that I've had the same job for 46 years. I've had the same bride for 44 years.
Oh, bless you.
Have four great children of our own. My wife and I decided that 4 number had a nice feel to it. So
Okay.
we have a boy and 3 girls, all living in northeastern Ohio.
Okay.
All married, and they, as of April of this year, they have all made us grandparents.
Okay, congratulations on that. Jeff, tell us about what volunteer activities you find to be most interesting and challenging.
Well, when I came back home from college, I did some work with the Easter Seals. We had some friends of the family that had children that had handicap issues. And I was very comfortable with that. Plus, I was a pretty good driver. So
Okay.
I spent about 4 years taking the kids with disabilities to summer camp and to other events and stuff. And from that, I ended up serving on the board of Easter Seals.
Okay.
Kind of seeing how the system worked and what the goals for the community were. So I enjoyed that. When we moved to Avon Lake, our house in Lorain wasn't big enough for 4 kids.
Okay.
So my dad was leaving his house and gave me an offer I couldn't refuse.
Okay.
And we moved to Avon Lake in 1985 and had our last 2 kids. And immediately saw the difference between suburban life and urban life in the big city of Lorain.
Understand.
And got to be involved with folks, and I did some community service out here. I transferred from the Lorain Kiwanis Club to the Avon Lake Kiwanis Club. I don't put that on my resume because I didn't finish my Kiwanis life. I dropped out after a while, but was a past president, and I enjoyed the service clubs. And then I did a stint for Mayor Vince Urban and for Mayor Berner on the Civil Service Commission.
Okay.
Using some of my business and HR background, serving with Mark Fenderbosch, who is his wife is councilman here
Yes,
in Avon Lake.
understand.
So Mark and I served with a number of other guys on the Civil Service Commission, and that was interesting volunteer work.
Understand. Where did you develop your sense of dedication to community life and giving back? Did you have a role model, or was this all on your own?
Well, I think where it came from was, I think, Rudy, when you work in the same community that you grew up in, then you get married and you raise a family in the same community that you grew up in. And so
I see.
when all those things drive back to the community that you're in and you've got a good feel for it, those opportunities for community service just develop, and when you see one, you take it because you care.
Understand. What surprised you about the positions that you've held on these volunteer activities on boards and business associations?
Well, I think on the community service issues, like the Kiwanis Club and I was on the Zoning Board of Appeals, and also the Civil Service Commission. It was trying to establish the culture that the community wanted to have for itself.
Okay.
Assessing what the desires were of the community and trying to develop the system that would deliver that. I think what was challenging about being on some of the other things I did, I served 12 years on the board at Lorain County Community College. I was a governor's appointee to that board, and Governor Bob Taft.
Okay.
And then was my first term, and then Governor Voinovich was my second. But that and our state association that I served over 20 years on, and actually went through the chairs and was a president. When you get into those kinds of volunteer work, it's taking a look at the problems for the college or the problems for the ready mix industry and trying to break them down into pieces, using the expertise of the people that are working on the situation, and then gluing it back together into some kind of a strategic plan.
And solving the problem.
And solve the problem. But like anything else, they say, well, the only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time.
I see.
So you break it down into bites and you go from there.
Okay. What were some of the duties that you did for these groups? Speaking engagements, that kind of thing?
No, I don't believe I spoke, other than when I was president for that year of our state association. It really didn't involve much speaking. It was more or less roll up your sleeves and go to work type of thing. And with the college, my entire time on the board, Roy Church was the president of the college, and we didn't have any trouble figuring out where he thought we ought to go.
I see.
He had a great vision for the college.
I see.
And our job as the board was to assess whether that goal was, that vision was where we wanted the community to be, and then to turn around and make sure that the pieces and parts got in place to make the community understand why this was an important goal.
Okay, yeah. Tell us about the steps you've taken in your career.
Well, the first step was to shovel snow, and I learned entrepreneurial very well at an early age. I shoveled snow, I raked leaves, I mowed lawns. I had a paper route back in the days when the Lorain Journal was an evening paper. Afternoon paper routes weren't real popular, so I didn't have a lot of competition. And so I started out understanding, that if you want to get ahead, you got to work to get ahead. And my dad was my role model in that regard. And then when I got to college, my role model was Joe Paterno, who, his motto that always stuck with me says, the will to win is understood. The will to prepare is essential.
Okay, understand. Tell us about managing your company.
Well, I came up through the company while I was in college. I worked summers, in the operations end of it, right side by side with all the fellows that were working there. And then when I got out of college, I came into the office and I did dispatching. And then from dispatching and learning the customers, then I went into sales. And then after an appropriate amount of time, my dad decided it was time to let me chart some of the course. And so in 1992, I became the president of the company. He retained chairman of the board. So, but I became president and was working then at setting the direction for the company.
Okay. What best prepared you for owning the company, owning that business?
Well, part of the family that owned it. You know, it's an opportunity. When you say the American dream, it's an opportunity not everybody has. Not everybody. I was the only one of us four that wanted to be involved in the family business. Not everybody. That's not everybody's cup of tea. But I think that it wasn't just that it was a family business. The construction people, the contractors, and their employees, our employees. I call them the last cowboys in America.
I see.
We work from sun up to sundown. Our motto is we only work half a day, 6 to 6.
What was the most challenging aspect of running a company? Was it people, materials? You know.
The most challenging piece, Rudy, is in a small family business, you don't have a lot of specialists or department heads. So you have to know a little bit about everything and trust that you can find somebody that knows a lot about one thing or another.
Why has your business been so successful? Can you point out, something that?
I think it's a dedication to the customer's needs. We have a hierarchy we follow, and number one is customer. Number two is company. Got to take care of the company so that it can take care of the customer. And we as employees, we're third. But if we put ourselves first ahead of the customer, things generally fall apart. So I think that was the process. It's not terribly complicated if you focus on the customer. And we're known as having the highest quality ready-mix product in Northern Ohio. So.
Okay, well, what advice would you give someone who wants to own their own company?
Well, looking back, I started out when I got out of college. I spent more time hanging out with my dad and his friends than I did with my high school friends. My dad and his friends were already where I wanted to be, so I figured that was the best way to learn how to get there. And I would advise somebody to have a mentor, take the advice early on.
Okay.
When you feel you've got enough, enough discipline and enough knowledge, then you step out and set your own course. And the most important thing is making sure that everybody in the company knows more about something than you do.
Okay, good advice. Tell us about your past interactions with government agencies.
I don't think I've had anything extraordinary. Obviously, in the political scene, we've had interaction with politicians, being involved in conservative things all the way back to high school. But I think that my interaction with government has been about the same as everybody else's as a citizen. I feel some of those same frustrations that people feel with government that's not quite responsive.
Okay.
I think and then I think as a business, it mirrors the same thing, because a business is an entity into itself as well. It may be 40, 50, 60, 10 people, whatever, but the business has, there's such a thing as a corporate citizen, and it needs things from government. It needs support from government that individuals don't, but I think the interaction with government is frustrating for many of us. I think that the whole last 2 years with the COVID has shown that, because, excuse me, even though it was something we've not experienced for over 100 years, there was a lot of disagreement within government of what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing, and I think people have an expectation out of government that somebody clearly sees what needs to be done.
Okay. How did you reach your decision to run for Lorain County Commissioner?
Well, it actually wasn't a very complicated decision. Been involved in trying to bring competition political competition to Lorain County for quite a while. I've been involved in things because I believe that government, when people have to compete to get their job, run for election, I think it tends to create better government. And when you look at some of the communities in Ohio that are doing the best, they're the ones that are 55, 45, or they're 42, 48, where the two political parties have some balance, and they can't be dictatorial. They can't be autocratic. They have to make sure that what they're doing is good for everybody. They can't just do whatever they want. And I think that the thing that struck me about running for commissioner was that back in 2020, we elected 2 new commissioners because people said they wanted change. And this year, I think my opponent is a fine individual. I just think that his policies and his belief structure may not be in tune with people today, and they wanted change. Well, then let's remove the third one, because we've kind of reverted back to the same policies and stuff that we had for the last 70 years, and I think people want that to be updated and get more current.
What characteristics should voters be looking for in a candidate?
Well, I think number one, they should be looking for integrity. I think too many times we let people make campaign commitments and promises, and we don't follow up and watch out whether that candidate actually delivered on those promises. And I do say that that's a public problem. That's not necessarily a candidate problem. If you don't hold them accountable, then I guess we have to count for themselves to be accountable. And so I think integrity is important. I don't mind a politician that toots his own horn and says, I promised you I would do this, and we got it done. Because I think people need to be told that. I think the second one is discipline.
Okay.
There's a lot of things in the world that are gray in our personal lives. Pick a number, it might be 20% white, 20% black, and 60% gray. But I think what we need out of government is we need more discipline than that. And if the people say this is what we want, and it's moral and it's legal, I think we should work to deliver that. I think people should get the community that they desire. And I think it takes discipline to do that, because it's obviously never going to be a unanimous process.
True.
So when 60% of the county wants something and the other 40% doesn't, it takes discipline to do it, but then make the 40% understand that this is really better for you than you think.
Okay. What are the primary responsibilities of a commissioner in Lorain County?
Well, the way that we're structured, because we have so many elected offices, people have a fallacy that they think the commissioners control everything. Okay. And they don't. The county recorder controls his own department, the prosecutor controls his department, and so forth and so on. Including the auditor, the clerk of courts, and all the people that we elect. Okay. What they do have is fiscal responsibility. The checks and balances in the system are that the commissioners are responsible for the budgets to run all the departments, and that they follow budget and they spend the money according to the budget, and that what they're doing is legal and appropriate. So the commissioners have more budgetary control than they have visionary control. Okay. But as you learn real early in life from your boss or your dad or whoever, he who controls the gold controls the game. So I see. So it is possible to steer departments in the right direction to deliver for Lorain County. It's just it's not a clear situation, because the commissioners run it through the purse strings. I see. What's the best preparation for holding public office? Well, I happen to be part of the philosophy that says that if you want somebody that's going to spend your money the way you would spend it, or guard it wisely the way you would, that we have to take our turns as citizens serving in the government. And I think the perfect example of that is the way that the city councils and the township trustees are structured, where they have a regular turnover. And there's people that serve on school boards, they serve on council, they serve as township trustees for a while, and then they retire from that and somebody else steps forward. But they've walked in the shoes of the very people that they're governing.
Okay.
You don't see many career politicians at that level of life, of political life. But for some reason, we've had when it seems like when you get the county government and above, we seem to have a preponderance of career political office holders. And so at the end of the day, I think they lose touch with the changing world, and I think they lose touch with the voters because they're interested in getting 51% of the vote.
I see.
Maybe not doing what really needs to be done, or not doing everything that needs to be done.
Understand.
So I think I think the representative form of government is the reason, and that's the reason I'm doing it. I'm retiring from the family business, and I want to do this and try and make some permanent change so that my family and friends and neighbors and the others can enjoy what I've enjoyed. We've had kind of a falling on hard times. In Lorain County, we're part of the Rust Belt. As I told my daughter who's taking over the business, there's a little over 23,000 jobs that are not here in Lorain County that were here when I got here in 1974. And that's a big number.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a big number. So when you talk about opportunity, I think everybody should have the ability that their kids and their grandkids can live where they live, and that they don't have to leave the area unless they want to, okay, to find work. They shouldn't have to leave home to find work. They should be able to find work here at home.
Understand. What are your qualifications for being a commissioner?
Well, I don't miss work.
Have discipline.
I've missed about 10. I'm disciplined. I've missed about 10 days in 46 years, and I'm determined, and I'm used to handling things. When you own your own little family business, or in my case, I manage it for the family. I'm not the sole owner, but the buck stops at my desk. I can't pawn it off on anybody. I can't push it down the road. I got to deal with it. And I think that the ability to not be afraid of a problem, to not think that it's too big to be handled, and to bring people into the solution. In our family business, almost every problem we have solved has been with the help of some of the customers and some of the employees. So bringing a collaboration to the table, you don't have to know everything. You just have to know who does.
Okay. How can you make the government of Lorain County more transparent?
Well, it's one of my campaign pledges. I'm very disappointed. There's a lack of trust in government when people can't see it.
Okay.
And when they don't know what they're doing, and money's being spent, and they don't know why, and they don't know what for, and they don't know how we got to there. I think that leads to where we're at today, which is people they kind of have a no tax. They don't want to approve taxes, no new taxes, because they don't know what their elected officials are doing with the money they already have. And if you want my money because you got a better idea than me on what to do with it, you got to sell me on that.
Yeah.
You got to tell me that you're going to spend this dollar wisely. And so I think that when you talk about transparency, I think that we currently hold about a 45 to 60 minute public meeting on Wednesday mornings. We don't hold them in the evenings when people can come. And we hold, by their own admission, you can't know what goes on in executive session because that's the whole, that's protected by law. But when you have a 3 or 4 hour private meeting and decisions are made and the public can't see what went in, if they can't see what it went into the stew, they have a hard time thinking it's going to taste good. And so I think when you talk about transparency, I have pledged to do whatever it takes to get the budget on the website so people can see that we're spending $2 million a year for this and $1 million for that and $500,000, so they could get some comfort of what's happening, because they work hard, they pay taxes, they want to know
Right.
what you're doing with
Right.
the money. And I think that that was proven. Josh Mandel did that down in Columbus when he was the state treasurer. And he got a national award for transparency, because you can't hide. If you got to approve it and put it on the website, you can't hide from it 2 months later, because it's on the website. And so I would add to that when we write those checks and we say we're going to spend $2 million for something, but 100,000 of it is going to this entity, 200,000 is in this contract, 150,000 is a third. I think people should see where that money goes, because I think people are smart enough to see if the money's being spent with friends of friends of friends, or whether it's being spent truly in the public interest.
Understand. Tell us about your strategic plan to resolve current county challenges, including budget and human resources.
Well, let's take the little one first, the HR piece. We had an HR director. I don't know as to quality, but it seemed like she was doing a good job, and brought experience to the position and was trying to implement some changes. And when those changes became politically annoying, then she was given a difficult time at work, and eventually she left the county in a very bitter way, and with a very critical exit interview.
Okay.
And that, we were doing a lot of micromanaging and those kinds of things. So I think what we need out of the HR department is we need to learn how to avoid, when we sign a contract, it's a contract. We need to manage people according to the law. We need to do reviews. We need to do step. And I come from a world where we had civil service, both in Lorain, where I grew up, and here in Avon Lake, we have civil service. And oddly enough, one of the few entities that doesn't have civil service is county government.
Okay.
All the jobs are appointed or given away. They're not really earned. We've got great employees. They do a good job, but there should be some process in order to, again, to transparency, that if 3 people want a job and there's only 1 job, then the 3 people should compete for it. They should take a test and be interviewed for it, and they should be selected on their merits.
Okay.
And I think-
Meritocracy. Yeah.
Yes, and so I think that an HR department properly staffed and running would do that. The much bigger issue is the budget. Currently, we're running over $70 million. We have typically run in the mid-60s, okay, and our revenue for this year is $65 million. It's projected next year to be 68, because one of the benefits that government gets out of inflation is if something costs more, the sales tax costs more.
I got you.
And Lorain County government is largely funded on sales tax. So if what you bought for $100 is now $110, they're not getting $6 in taxes, they're going to get $8 in taxes.
Understand.
So, but we're still running at a deficit, and I think that it starts largely with the fact that we don't actually start a budget. We just ask every department what they want. We do some kind of massaging to that, and at no point do we ever talk to the citizens. And so my resolution to the budget problem is to actually meet with groups of people. The college is very good at doing that. They have a strategic plan and they execute on it. I learned a lot from my time on the board. If we would apply that same skill set to the county government, and instead of saying we have this much money, what do we do with it? We ought to start with it. What do the people want, and how much of that can we give them, given that we have this much money?
Better approach.
I would think so, and so at the end of the day, I think the budget starts that way. You don't just cut expenses and cut departments, and there's an adage in business, and you can't cut your way to profit. You have to work your way to profit. If you start cutting expenses, sooner or later that results in lower sales. So you have to spend money to make money, and you have to work your way to profit. In government, we're doing the reverse at the county level. We're just sitting there taking a wish list from the very employees that are granted it's their paycheck and they'd like to have a nice paycheck, but we ought to be asking the citizens what they want for their money.
Okay, understand. Tell us about your 7 districts reform plan.
Well, we worked on that in the, following Cuyahoga County. They had some problems. We had some problems. We had a commissioner that went to jail. We had some inappropriate relationships in government contracts going on. We had a lot less zeros than Cleveland, but the same issues. And I was part of a group of everyday people, Republicans, Democrats, county trustees, retired office holders, business people. And we had a group that we put together saying, what could we do to solve some of the structural issues with Lorain County government? And the charter project we came up with, and the cornerstone of that is to have 7 districts, which means that if you want the county to make sure that they're working for all the citizens, you make sure that every citizen has somebody from their community on the Board of Commissioners. And it's kind of strange. We have 3 for townships, 3 trustees, and it works well because the townships have a very narrow, specific mission. Okay? And they execute on it because there's not a lot of room. There's continuous improvement, but there's not a lot of argument for that sake. City councils, there's not one city in Lorain County that has a council with 3 people. The smallest one is 5. Okay? And what you have with 3, when you have $70 million and a huge mission to accomplish, it puts an awful lot of power into the hands. If you study group activity and leadership, you have 3 people. One says go left, the other one says go right. All the power falls to the 3rd person.
I gotcha.
So in order to avoid that pitfall that we're currently languishing in, right now we have a lot of political activity going on at the commissioner level because everybody's trying to cover their political life. But if we want to avoid that, the way to do that, and we worked with Cleveland State University School of Government, and for Lorain County, for its size, 7 is the correct number, that people that live in the country will have a representative, people that live in the other side of the county will have theirs, the people in the Northeast will have theirs, Lorain and Elyria will have theirs. So you can break Lorain County into 7 districts where everybody will probably have a lot more knowledge of their commissioner they elect than they will under the current system.
I gotcha.
And I can tell you from my experience now, I knew it was always hard to campaign countywide, but I could tell you, Rudy, it's a lot worse than I thought it was. There's a lot of ground to cover.
I see. I understand that. What can you do to stimulate business development in Lorain County and Ohio, for that matter?
Well, Ohio's not the concern of the commissioners, but if we need to support people that go to Columbus and will represent Lorain County and make sure that we're in the game. There's no such thing as guaranteeing. Ohio's a great state and it's got a lot of great assets and great opportunities, but if we're going to compete with other counties in Ohio, we just need to make sure that our representatives keep us in the game. And I think largely they're doing that. In Lorain County, we have to prepare ourselves. We need to make sure that the infrastructure, the communication system, natural gas, water, sewer, electricity, all the things that are needed. We have a lot of empty land, and we could support a lot of new industry in Lorain County, but we don't necessarily have all of the infrastructure where we need to have it.
Okay.
The couple of new exits on the turnpike is a perfect example. If you look at the growth that's happened off of the Baumhart and Route 58 exits,
incredible.
It's incredible. And if you go over to North Ridgeville and you look at what happened where we got 10 and 480 and the turnpike all connected, it's one of the busiest places in the county. So for business and industry, whether it's retail or manufacturing, the highway system's number one. So there again, we have to lobby with our state people to make sure that we get our share of the transportation dollars. But then we need to look at our land and our infrastructure and decide, are we willing to spend some of our money to get ready on the front end so that when an industry comes here, they'll have employees, and we will not only get the economic benefit of the income taxes, but we will get the cultural benefit that comes with having our children and grandchildren, living where we live with us. And I think the perfect example of that, going back into the 80s, was Westlake. If you look at the whole Crocker Road corridor,
Yeah.
people of Westlake taxed themselves in the 80s to put in the first sewers and water lines and electric and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And when industry wanted to locate in Westlake, they went, we're ready.
Okay.
So then that business, they pay sewer fees, they tap in, they pay utilities, that money goes to making the water and sewer plant better for everybody. The land grows in value, becomes more attractive, and success attracts success. And if you look at what happened in that corridor, that all happened because some developers and some public officials put their heads together. The government people listened to what the developers needed, and the developers helped the government officials gain confidence that the plan would work, and they collaborated, and the rest is history.
Okay. Just wonderful. What's the first action you would take when you're elected?
Well, I think the first action would be to make good on the transparency problem.
Okay.
I think those pieces have to be put in place first, because if we're going to do things and change things, we got to be straight up with people that this is the way it was and this is the way we're going to do it now. We need to be transparent because we're going to bring change. And if we keep hiding in the back room, then they're not going to trust us any more than they trust anybody else. So I think transparency is the first thing. And then I think the second thing as a commissioner is to make sure that we have the right 12 department heads, make sure they're qualified, turn around, and that includes the HR department, and then listen to them as they collaborate with their employees. Because believe it or not, if you ask the employees how to do a better job, they know.
Yeah, they might be able to tell you.
They know. So at the end of the day, nobody likes to be yelled at. Nobody likes to have them be considered by other people in low esteem. Okay? And at this point, any organization, if you ask the employees, some of their ideas won't be appropriate, but they do have ideas. And somewhere in there is if you collaborate all that, there's a plan. So if you ask the people, what do you want? And then and then you go to the employees and you say, we got this much money, how do we do this? They'll help you map that out. But you got to have the middle management. You got to have the leadership at the commissioner level, and you got to have the middle management that'll execute on that.
Okay. What do you think about Lorain County Joint Vocational School and existing co-op programs and their approaches to education and training?
Well, I think, I'll go back to two things, Rudy. Our family business, I was on it for a while. We've had other employees on it, but we have supported the masonry trowel trades, for, I'm going to say, 4 decades.
Okay.
Ever since the vocational school came around. And so the vocational school has a role to play with the kids of the high school age. Mm-hmm. The college seems to have taken on, in Lorain County, we don't have a career center. Some counties have a career center for adult education. And I'm not up to speed on what the vocational school is doing with that idea, but it appears Lorain County Community College is working on that. And again, I don't think they're trying to steal territory from the vocational school. I think they take their economic development mission very serious, from my experience of being on the board. And economic development is if you have workers that are trained in jobs that no longer exist, and you don't have workers that are trained for the jobs that are coming, it tells you pretty simply you need to retrain people. And I think the college has taken that mission very seriously, the adult worker that needs enhanced training. And the medical profession has nothing to do with concrete or the county, but if you look at the program that the college has had with the medical profession, that whole idea behind nurse, nurse's aide, practical nurse, registered nurse, there's a new class in the middle between the doctor and the nurse. I can't remember what that's called now. But as the whole health industry has evolved, the college has evolved with it to see to it that people that need more training in order to get that new certification can get that training. But they do it as part of their economic development. I think if there's a fallacy in our K-12 program or the vocational school is they're focused on teaching. The college is focused on teaching for economic development of the individual as well as the community. And I think we have to learn that knowledge, just for knowledge's sake, it's just knowledge. But if you could put it to work,
Practical.
now it has value.
Understand. What should be done with the Avon Lake electric generating facility? I know it's going through some changes now.
And I'm not really up to speed. I've been out of Avon Lake as I think we talked earlier. I was born and raised in Lorain, then I spent 30 years in Avon Lake, and now I'm in Henrietta Township the last 3 years.
Okay.
So, when I left town, the power plant was still making power.
I see.
But I would just say that I think what I've seen is some people making proposals,
Right.
what they would do. But it seems to me that those are people that are trying to get a contract to do something. So they're trying to find out what the city will support and what the city won't support so that they can make a bid for that service. But I think that if I could say one thing to all my friends and old neighbors in Avon Lake, be very expeditious and very disciplined in what you do with that property. At the end of the day, that's probably the nicest, best chunk of lakefront property in the city limits. And we should be very careful what we do with it in terms of long-term value, and public access should be part of that. I will tell you there's other communities on Lake Erie that have regretted that. They didn't want to stretch. They didn't want to spend the money. They didn't want to tax themselves to purchase lakefront property when they could, or riverfront property. And then later, they regretted that because once it's gone, it's gone for another 50 years.
Difficult to pay for it. How will you improve service to citizens by the county government?
Well, I think that goes back to the budget process. At the very root of the budget process is to ask the citizens what services are important to you and prioritize those services, and then turn around and develop the plan to meet those needs. It's not as simple as just are we gonna do a better job picking up the leaves? Are we gonna do a better job with cleaning the ditches? Or are we gonna chip and seal so many roads or asphalt so many roads or whatever? The decisions they're more rudimentary than that. We need to decide first what's most important and how many people does it benefit.
Okay.
And the things that benefit the most people the most should have the highest priority. We shouldn't have to have our communities competing that, all the money goes to this place or that place and none of it goes somewhere else. I think that people have lost touch with their county government because they don't see the fairness in the way things are done. And the way that you do that is go back to the budget process. You follow the college model and you bring in focus groups and you talk about what's important to farmers, what's important to suburbs, what's important in the cities. May well be three different things. I've lived in all three. It's three different worlds.
Yeah.
And so when you get that list of needs, that's how you improve the services. Because you can improve, transit service for the people in Lorain and Elyria, but the people in the country won't see that because that's not a high priority for them. So we need to understand that everybody's got a stake in the future. Everybody has to realize the other guy has a seat at the table. And if there's something important for the county and there's something important for the city, they need to get along and decide, well, if it's important, and it's important because the cities and the county, the country and the suburbs, we're all neighbors. And if some of us are happy and some of us aren't, we're not where we need to be yet.
Understand. What committees do you want to be on?
Well, that's one of the problems with 3 commissioners. It's kind of you're not the first person that's asked that question. And that's because councils like Avon Lake have what is it? We have 4 wards and 3 at large. So we have 7 county or council members. So you can break them into 2 or 3 people to examine sewers, 2 or 3 people to examine law enforcement,
right.
2 or 3 people to talk about parks and recreation. And you don't violate sunshine laws. And those committees come back to council and then say, we've investigated this situation or this problem or this vision, and we have a couple recommendations, and then all of council votes. When you only have 3 commissioners, anytime 2 of them meet, it's a public meeting. Okay. So they don't have committees. We're expecting 3 county commissioners to know everything about everything. And I think it's unrealistic. It's unfair to the commissioners. And we could do a better job of drilling down to the roots of issues and problems and progress if we could work with 3 people that know something about infrastructure, and they take a look at the ditches and the utilities and all the rest of it. And you take 2 or 3 people that have a penchant for law enforcement, and they talk about the sheriff and the jail and those things. At that point, you've got the ability to legally meet, study, and come back to the table with 10 times more knowledge than what we currently have. And it may well be part of why we have so many meetings in behind closed doors, because that's the only time they can, talk back and forth. But unfortunately, the law says if you're not discussing contracts, real estate, or personnel matters, you should be meeting in public. But that's a tough burden for the commissioners, and 7 commissioners will work a lot better than 3.
Okay, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Well, you said common sense.
Common sense, yeah, I'm using that again. What campaign activities have you conducted, and what are your future campaign plans?
Well, I've not actually ever worked on a campaign. Okay. I've worked to support candidates, and I've worked on raising funds for candidates, but this is my first time in an actual campaign. But I'm doing what I'm told I should be doing. I'm going to a lot of public events, making myself accessible to the people. We're doing the normal advertising. We'll be doing some mailings here shortly. And just trying to get the name out, because unfortunately in Lorain County there's about there's about 180,000 registered voters. You got about 120,000 households. And in today's world, they don't all get the newspaper, and they don't all have access to all the same information, so it becomes kind of a name game. And so I've been trying to get out and just say, this is my name, and I want you to feel comfortable with it, and I'm serious. I'm not just going to mail you a card that says vote for me. So we've been to all the festivals and all the parades. We'll be in the homecoming parade here in Avon Lake in 2 weeks.
We'll see you there.
Well, I'll be there. In fact, we're kind of going to make a family event out of it, since my 4 kids were raised here. My wife and I and the kids are all going to be marching together in the parade. So for Dad for commissioner. Okay.
How are you funding your campaign?
With a blend of my own funds, I made a commitment that it's a 3-legged stool, and I'm funding my campaign as the campaign reports will come out. A third is mine, my commitment to the job. I've got skin in the game. okay? And a third is coming from conservative allies that support conservative candidates. And then I've had some fundraising activities for the other third. And so it's kind of like private sector, political sector, and self-sector.
Okay. What outstanding things are planned for your future?
I want to be known sometime as the best one-term commissioner Lorain County ever had. I feel seriously about the idea of representative government, that whoever's sitting in government should have paid taxes, should have lived in the community that you're going to serve, so you understand things, and then if it makes sense to you, it'll probably make sense to a lot of other people. And so my goal right now is to get elected in November, have a successful term, and hopefully convince somebody else from the private sector to step forward and do the same thing.
Okay, yeah. What can Avon Lakers do to help your campaign? Are volunteers needed?
Well, the first thing is vote. But I'm very proud to say that Avon votes at an 80-85% clip.
Okay.
Which leads the county almost all the time. So we're passionate about our right to vote, and I think that's a wonderful thing. Whichever way you vote, the old adage, Rudy, if you didn't vote, I don't want to hear your problem.
Okay.
But I think that I have a website, and you can go onto the website, and if you like this interview or you like something else that you've learned about me and you want a yard sign, the number one reason that people vote for who they do is not that they know the person. This was a hard reality that I learned going down to a seminar. And that is because, there's 180,000 people. I spent my whole life in Lorain County. I might have had personal contact with about 10,000 of them.
I got you.
Okay? That leaves a lot of room for improvement. And so you got to get your name out. And the number one reason that people vote for a candidate is because they know and trust somebody that knows and trusts that candidate. So what I need is those 50,000 people that know the 10,000 people I know. I need those 10,000 I know to put yard signs out and talk and convince the other 50 to go with them, and then I'll be fine.
Okay. Now you have an email address and a website.
I have a website, voteforriddell.com, kept it simple.
Okay.
People always wonder, is it, Riddell for commissioner? Is it Riddell for family values? Is it Riddell for whatever? We just made it simple. Vote for Riddell.
Okay.
And I have an email address, but if you get on the website, I get that. And my email address has been there. I've had not as much play on the website as I would have liked, but I've had people send me questions. Heard me speak somewhere, read the literature, had a question. They put the question on the website. Every day or so, I go to the website, I pick them up, I respond. And I think that, my personal email address, I don't mind the world having it, but I have a lot of other things going on, and I'm trying to keep things where I can contain them.
Okay. In summary, what's making sense to you and what doesn't?
I think it's making sense that people want change. Our own lives change all the time. In my lifetime, two of the biggest changes were 9/11, which changed the focus of security for the country, and I think that the pandemic.
Yeah.
And no matter what happens, everybody has an opinion about what the government should or shouldn't have done. What did they do well? What did they do bad? And I hope somebody distills that down and comes up with a plan for the next pandemic, because I think shutting down the greatest culture, the greatest economy, the schools, and all that stuff, shutting it completely down for extended periods of time turned out to be counterproductive. And we were victims of our own fear. We didn't understand it. We didn't understand it, so we, go back to that famous speech after Pearl Harbor. We have nothing to fear but fear itself. Well, we let ourselves be afraid of fear, and I think that those two things, people want that change, but then they're willing to give it up because, well, gee, this guy did this for my community, or this guy did that, or and I think we spend too much focus, both good and bad, on one issue. I hear people all the time, they want change, but then when you talk about a candidate, they go, I could never vote for him because he or she did this one thing.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how we got where we're at. Because when people are afraid to do something for criticism, it's human nature not to do anything.
Okay.
And so at the end of the day, if you're really serious about change, you're going to take a lump here and there. And I always go back to Ronald Reagan. He was a tremendous president, came out of the private sector. His job was a governor, and then he never thought he'd be president, but all of a sudden the opportunity was there. But I mean, he wasn't a trained politician.
Right.
But what a wit and what a personality. He gave you faith in his government. But he always had the adage that the fellow that agrees with me 80% of the time is my ally, not a terrorist.
Understand. And I think the people of Lorain County should be grateful that someone like you, with your experience and your dedication, is willing to go ahead and bite the bullet and do what needs to be done as far as being a commissioner of Lorain County.
Well,
and we should be grateful and thank you for taking this
I don't deserve,
effort.
Rudy, any special accolades. There are many out there who could serve.
But you've done it.
Well, if there's one legacy I hope to leave, I hope that there'll be another 10 people that'll say, you know what, I can do that.
Okay. Well, thank you for appearing, and thank you for watching. Please give us feedback. You'll have our email addresses on the bottom of the screen. Please, if you'd like to be on the show, or you know some interesting person who would want to be on the show, please give us those contact information, and we'll see about having those folks on. I'm Rudy Breglia. Remember, seatbelts save lives.
The preceding program was presented to you by a community producer. The statements, views, and opinions expressed were not necessarily those of ALC TV or the City of Avon Lake.